Alrighty, today we're going to be looking at the poem Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Night by Robert Frost. Robert Frost, very well-known, popular American poet. He also wrote the poem A Road Not Taken, which you may have heard of, also a very famous poem. Died around 1962 or early 1960s. And this is one of his most well-known poems as well. And before we start, I just want to say that there's two kind of interpretations of this poem. One which is more widely recognized, but there's definitely a more sinister theme that a lot of people do believe exists. But we'll discuss that shortly. First thing I want to do is I just want to actually read through the poem so that you get an idea of what the poem's about. It says, "Whose woods these are, I think I know." In other words, forest woods. "His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." Okay, so that is the poem. Consists of 4 stanzas, and we're now going to look at a more analytical copy, annotations. As you can see here, written in 1922, published in 1923. I've written here, the poem highlights the difference between wishes and obligations. In other words, we have a desire to do something, and we would love to keep on doing it, and we've all recognized this, we've all experienced this, but unfortunately we can't stick around because we have responsibilities and things that we have to do. Alright, that is one of the main themes. The other theme is the beauty of nature, which we will see now. Whose woods these are, I think I know. So the premise is that there is an adult on a horse, and he's walking in the middle of nowhere seemingly, but alongside a forest, and it's very, very cold. Right. And he comes to these woods, and you can tell that he is near the woods because it says these woods. Alright. So he says, "Whose woods these are, I think I know." I think I know whose land this is and whose forest this belongs to. Right. "His house is in the village, though." The man who owns these woods, his house is in the village. And it would make sense that he would be in the village near civilization on a night like this because it is so cold. "He will not see me stopping here." It's almost as if the speaker is relieved in that the person who owns the woods is not going to see him. "To watch his woods fill up with snow." So I'm just dismounted my horse and I'm watching the snowfall, and I'm watching the woods get covered in snow. Bit of alliteration there with watch and woods. Second stanza. We'll come back to the rhyme scheme in that just now. The second stanza says, "My little horse must think it queer," so he's on a horse, "must think it strange to stop without a farmhouse near." You know, the horse is thinking, why would we be stopping? There's no farmhouse. In other words, there's no shelter, there's no food, we're in the middle of nowhere, and it's very, very cold. So it's almost like somewhat personification in that the horse is able to think for the man, for its rider. But at the same time, a horse does have the ability to think, so that's a little bit debatable. "Between the woods and frozen lake." So he's not in the woods, he's alongside the woods, and on the other side there's also a frozen lake. Now, the fact that it's the darkest evening of the year suggests, in the literal sense, that it's physically, the shortest number of hours of sunlight, the longest number of hours of darkness. And we know that in the northern hemisphere, considering that it's an American poet, USA, so that would be the 21st, 22nd of December. Alright. "He gives his harness bells a shake." Now he refers to the horse. He's trying to communicate with the rider. He's also quite anxious, this horse, because he doesn't know, now this doesn't make sense. This is not what normally happens. So I've said here the horse wonders why they've stopped, to ask if there is some mistake. Why are we stopping? The only other sounds besides the harness bells are easy wind, a gentle breeze, and downy flake, the soft falling of the snow onto the ground. So it's quite a majestic scene, representing the fact that the poet is admiring the scene, admiring the landscape. Very nice and quiet and peaceful. Alliteration again there in sounds and sweep. I'm going to come back to a few things shortly. The last stanza says, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, coming back to this line just now, but he's saying alliteration, dark and deep. Yes, they are dark because it's night time, and they're deep because the forest goes on forever and ever, or seemingly so. But I have promises to keep. But shows that there is a condition that he can't stay there forever because he has other things that he has to do. Okay, so he's on his way to the village, and he has miles to go before he sleeps. Miles to go before he sleeps. Alright, okay, before I sleep, first person narration in this poem. Now, there are two meanings here. The one is he literally has a far way to go before he gets back to his home in the village where he can sleep. Or it could be that miles to go, in other words, is life. He has a lot of things, a lot of journeys, a lot of obligations that he has to meet, a lot of responsibilities. So there's a lot of things that he has to do first in his life before he gets to sleep, where sleep is actually death, and sleep is therefore a euphemism for death. Right, so there's two meanings there. Alright, now I just want to come back here to the rhyme scheme. You'll see it's no, a, though rhymes with no, so that's also a. Here doesn't rhyme with anything, so that's a B, and then snow rhymes with though and no, so we make that a. So our rhyme scheme is A, B, A. Similarly, in the next stanza, B, B, C, B. The interesting thing, though, is this line that ends here that doesn't rhyme with the rest in that stanza forms the sound that the next stanza rhymes with predominantly. So here, queer, near, year. Lake is the odd one out. So therefore we think that the predominant rhyme in the next stanza is going to rhyme with lake. And we look, shake with steak, flake. We're not disappointed. Okay, so that's a very interesting rhyme scheme we got there. But essentially the rhyme scheme is A, B, B, C, B, C, D, C, D, 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 D. The last stanza a little bit different, where we have all the lines rhyming. Then, of course, we recognize that it's written in iambic tetrameter. A tetrameter means that there are 4 syllables stressed, 4 syllables not stressed in each line. So each line has 8 syllables. And then I just want to talk about enjambment quickly, just in case, just to recap. That means that the lines flow from one to the next without losing meaning. Okay, so this sentence, my little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Okay, so this line runs onto that line, same sentence. We call that run-on lines or enjambment. Now, the other meaning in terms of the poem, I think what we're going to do is we're going to stick with the fact that it's an adult in the woods, and he recognizes how beautiful the scene is and wishes he could stay, but unfortunately has things that he has to do and therefore can't stay. Alright, so we've got this wishes versus obligations theme. We've got the beauty of nature theme, talking about the easy wind, the downy flake, lovely, dark and deep. But then the other meaning is that the speaker is very depressed and on the verge of committing suicide. Now, the kind of parts of the poem that hint to that and suggest that is where it talks about the first one here, the darkest evening of the year. It's almost as if this is the most depressed that he's been all year. It's a very dark time in his life. Also, it talks about here how the horse, thinks, why are we stopping? This is not what normally happens. The fact that it's in the middle of nowhere, so he's isolated. The fact that no one's going to see him do the deed. And then also, why would you describe the woods dark and deep? Both are kind of sinister words, suggest a place that is not friendly, but you describe them as lovely. It's almost as if he's relating his own life and his own emotional and psychological state to that of the woods as well. So that is the kind of messages that we're getting across here if we really want to analyze the poem. And I've actually written here, there's a suggestion that the speaker is contemplating suicide due to the words dark, deep, promises to keep. So if we had to say, make use of diction to support the notion that the speaker is wishing to commit suicide, then you would have to quote certain words such as this: dark, deep, promises to keep. Why promises to keep? Because it's almost as if he's saying, I can't leave my family or the people that depend on me behind. I have to look after them. I have promises to keep. It a promise that I'll be with you, a promise that I'll look after you, those kind of things. And miles to go before I sleep. In other words, I want to sleep, I want to die, but there's so much more that I have to do first, that I'm not allowed to kill myself at this stage. So that's a very dark theme, sinister theme. I can tell you now that's not the theme that we're really going with here. What we really want to look at is this existential crisis here, the fact that he's trying to avoid responsibilities at home, that he would love to stay in nature and admire its beauty and just be at peace for a while, but he realizes that he can't because he has all these responsibilities that he has to do. All right.